I want to talk about Tom Cruise and his history in the Church of Scientology. How did he get into this mess in the first place? I was reminded of this because recently there was a rumor going around that the Church of Scientology was planning to buy the Jim Henson Company lot in LA. That turned out getting debunked, but it just reminded me the most famous Scientologist, of course, is Tom Cruise. And it doesn't come up very often how he ended up becoming a Scientologist. So I wanted to get into that backstory. Essentially, it was because his first wife convinced him to join. And I know a lot of people talk about his marriage to Katie Holmes. They talk about his marriage to Nicole Kidman as well. But a lot of people don't know about his marriage to Mimi Rogers when he was 23. And I had never heard of this woman, but she was an actress at the time. They got married in the late 1980s. They met at a dinner party, reportedly, while he was working on Top Gun. We got another 20 from Mac N. I'm Gen Z. I'm 25. I have no issue writing violent scenes, but smut makes me feel gross trying to write. I don't know what it is. While there are some philosophical and moral arguments, it's not overt. I'll let you know when it's done.
Yeah, I think this is how you know men and women are different, because women authors do not have any problem writing smut. And it's very rarely happens in men's literature, and if it does, it's usually depicting like horrible abuse.
Well, I guess
historical
probably
stuff.
Because men are visual, so they watch pornography. Women, I guess, have a more like cerebral.
That's what they say.
Yeah, attraction to reading about it.
But
instead.
it almost just feels like pointless. It's like why do I need to? I don't know. It seems like a waste of time to me.
I've heard it put like this: guys get off from head, girls get off from head cannon. That's what I've heard.
I hate that.
I hate that.
That's essentially what it is.
I never wanted to hear that phrase. It was against my will.
I also didn't want to hear about Joker 2's sex scene, so
Aiden,
here we are.
You were telling me earlier that Scientology scares the shit out of you.
Scares the hell out of me.
Can you tell me why? Why that specifically? With all of the things that you cover on your channel, why would Scientology scare you?
So, most cults do not have any degree of institutional power behind them.
Okay.
Like most things that we would consider out and out cults, right? Mm-hmm. Scientology has been known to, when people try and expose their inner workings, Scientologists have been known to do like remarkable character assassinations. Like they will invent things that are so legitimate looking that it's hard to get away from it. They will ruin your life for doing something, and there's that threat if you try to leave as well. So, I wanted to do a video on Scientology. We were doing some cult videos. I was like,
I'll watch that for sure.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
My co-host, who's my producer and my editor, refused.
Really?
He was like, I will not shoot it. I will not edit it. I will not help. He was like, we're not doing this because I don't want them to come and screw up our lives, because we have a big enough platform that they would notice.
Right.
And listen, I don't like it, but I value my life and my ability to research and hopefully contribute to the study of history in the future as a professor. Like I value that. So I'm just going to stay away.
You've been scared of silence.
Yeah. Literally, there are a few people I will not talk shit about. That's one of them.
Scientologists do seem uniquely interested with controlling public perceptions. And I think former Scientologist Leah Remini has talked about that a lot. She's talked about her experience getting sucked into the Church of Scientology and how they tried to do character assassination on her. After, like, in the media after she left.
How do they convince people? Like, obviously they've got ways to persuade people, but I don't see how they go to someone that's very religious in the first place and convince them to leave the church and go join Scientology.
But it's so easy
Is it just
when
people
that
that are
person,
agnostic and non-religious?
Right. It sounds like that's kind of what happened with Tom Cruise. This says Tom Cruise was married for a few years in the late 1980s to an actress named Mimi Rogers. Now, for context, Mimi Rogers was raised in the Church of Scientology. So she apparently stuck with it. Her father ended up becoming what they call a squirrel, starting his own other sect of Scientology later on. But she is widely credited as the woman who got Tom Cruise into Scientology. This actress allegedly brought him into the controversial church, which later led him to be the, quote, golden boy of Scientology. Their brief romance started sometime in the mid-1980s with varying accounts of how exactly they met. Soon after they got together, they wed secretly in New York. They seemed like a normal, happy couple, but their marriage was brief. So what's weird is that they tell completely opposite stories of how they met, which in itself is very weird. Tom Cruise and Mimi Rogers met, but they both had different accounts of how it happened. Cruise insisted for years that they met at a dinner party while he was making Top Gun, and that he was interested in Rogers, but she was with someone at the time. However, Mimi Rogers claims that they were set up by mutual friends a whole year after Tom Cruise claimed. She told The Sun back in 1987, quote, "I wasn't seeing anybody, he wasn't seeing anybody, and our friends thought, these people should be going out. Let's see if they want to go out with each other. And we said, oh, what the heck?" I'm not trying to read into it too much, but why would they have totally different stories?
I don't know. That's weird. I do think that a large part of this, though, the reason that today in 2024, we're like, why the hell do people join Scientology? That makes no sense. Everybody knows it's a cult. In the 80s,
no one knew anything yet.
I'm not saying, not even that, man. I'm saying,
sorry, we have a 20 from Buzzard.
Yeah.
Thank you for covering the cult my parents met in. My lack of sanity always ties back to those Satanists. If your parents actually met in the Church of Scientology, I need to know more. Please tell us the story of how that happened.
Send some voicemails in.
Send a voice message. How about that? Join the Discord.
It's either like Florida or like Southern California, because they have a huge center up in North Hollywood, and they have the giant blue building everyone knows about in LA as well. Yeah. And they have like the Celebrity Center, which is where I live pretty close to, which is like exclusively if you're a well-to-do person of high society. And I think that's part of it too, is they can offer you to do stuff.
Okay,
like,
I was gonna say, what's the appeal? Like, is it cool?
It's like a crazy secret army of like, it's like the dollar store Mossad, basically. When you hear the stuff that they've done, which I'm sure you can talk about, they dude, it's crazy.
Well, do you think
it's like an organization,
a competing force for Freemasons, or trying to maybe
that's what they're trying to do. That's part of it.
It seems very much like that is kind of what's going on here. Like Freemasonry, there's a 600-year history that you can talk about there that it would take an entire episode to get through. So without going deeply into that, the main reason that people join Freemasonry in the 21st century and in the 20th century as well is the community, the brotherhood, the networking. It's a way for you to, basically have a little club where everybody is obligated to help each other.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people take that too far, and they're like, oh, well, that means you have to hide crimes. It doesn't. Like, we're supposed to kick out Masons who do things that are wrong, it doesn't always happen, but that's not the point.
According to who?
Yeah, well, legally, like adultery, not allowed. Like morally and legally, there are things. It's all based on biblical concepts. But to get back to this, I think it's kind of the same thing, where you're doing this for the networking, for the community, and because it's technically a religion, it's all tax-free. It's probably a tax shelter and a tax haven for a lot of things.
That's why it's in Hollywood and LA.
Yeah, so I think it seems to me, especially being founded by, a guy who, I believe, as Joe Rogan put it, wrote the most nonsense or the most fiction of anybody ever.
Fiction. He wrote so much science fiction. When you read the book itself, like I forget what it's called. Not to do with like the religious stuff where they have like they detect engrams and stuff through like a psychiatric test. But when you read the book itself, like it reads like a science fiction novel. I read a bunch of science fiction when I was a kid. I was a nerd and in third grade reading science fiction novels. It reads like that. It's like that with like a layer of like, and so it comes to pass type. Book of Mormon stuff layered on top of it, and then also like some stuff clearly taken from like obviously like Abrahamic religions and stuff like that. It's just a wild. It reads like fiction, but they're just convincing you it's true. I
think a large part of it, a really great connection here, something that you can look back at historically, that we can see this. What I think is the same thing that happened with Scientology, where I think it probably started out as like a way for Hollywood people to avoid some taxes and get away and do something secretive.
Right. Yeah.
Bohemian Grove was the same way. It started off in San Francisco with journalists who were just meeting at a bar after work to do something that wasn't journalism before they went home. And then over time, it morphed.
A cult is born.
You had rich people who were like, well, I want to join into this because, you guys need a place to do your thing. and I want a secret little hangout group. And then over time, it morphs into being,
comes out of the
a place where powerful people go to talk about the Manhattan Project and weird things like that. Yeah. So I think that's probably what happened with Scientology. I think,
but something really sinister about it is the auditing that they do.
It's all super creepy.
Basically, your entire psyche. Yeah. They audit your psyche and your conscience until you're clear.
Exactly.
Until you're in a state of clear.
Yeah.
And it's very esoteric and hard to grasp what they mean, because obviously they're only going to tell you the version of it that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes them look less crazy.
It's like having a LARPing group that somehow turns into, a cult. Like you and your buddies are just going and goofing off in the woods, and then 50 years later, you're Scientology.
Yeah, so they got married when Tom Cruise was 23, Mimi Rogers was 29. Mm-hmm. They said they kept the wedding secret with only Emilio Estevez attending.
Why specifically Emilio Estevez?
And weirdly enough, she used to date Emilio Estevez before she married him.
That's all so weird.
Super weird. But they said it was because they didn't want the press to scrutinize their age gap of 6 years.
Yeah, and he was the
I don't buy it. I don't buy that. I don't buy that excuse. So the close family friend of Mimi Rogers spoke on a blog about how she originally wanted Tom Cruise to get into Scientology to make him stop his wandering eye, to put it lightly. Tom was effing everything that moved, but they were all women. I know why the gay rumors started later, but it had nothing to do with who he was having sex with. He slept with women, and he slept with a lot of them. So Mimi Rogers wanted him to become a Scientologist, I suppose, to temper his sexual proclivities. But also, of course, because she's trying to recruit him into this thing she's been in her entire life.
You know what this sounds like? Is if you've watched How I Met Your Mother, it sounds like the character of Barney Stinson. Like he's sleeping with everything that moves, but then he also gets himself in these insane predicaments. While
I guess
trying
this
to
was the
accomplish those
predicament
goals.
that he got himself into at quite a young age. People don't realize that. When he was more impressionable, of course. And what I understand from reading through all of this is that David Miscavige, the current, and he was still the head of Scientology at the time, David Miscavige became very involved in their life, in their marriage. He was intent on becoming very close friends with Tom Cruise, and he essentially ran surveillance on them, even to the point of the staff in their home, housekeepers, giving him intel as to what was going on, what they were talking about in private. And he was heavily concerned with this couple. So in 1989, Mimi Rogers and Tom Cruise split up. It's alleged that when Mimi Rogers saw there was something between Cruise and Nicole Kidman, she demanded that they go to Scientology's version of marriage counseling. I can't imagine what that entails. However, it didn't work, and they continued divorce proceedings. It's unclear why they split up for good. Many theorized it was the age gap or the fact that she was only referred to as Tom Cruise's wife, and even the Church of Scientology.
I think it's probably way more simple than that. I think that Scientology wanted, a golden boy, and so they had somebody honeypot Tom Cruise.
And she was assigned to him.
I would not be surprised.
If there's big state blackmail going on, that makes sense. Maybe if Epstein was East Coast, Scientology was West Coast.
Now this sounds like influence straight from David Miscavige. Mimi Rogers told Playboy in 1993 that they ended their marriage because of Tom Cruise's desire to become a monk. That just sounds like it came from David Miscavige himself. She said, Tom was seriously thinking of becoming a monk, at least for that period of time. It looked as though marriage wouldn't fit into his overall spiritual need.
Sounds like I'm pretty sure Kanye said something similar at
Did
some
he?
point. Yeah, just
about his divorce from Kim?
Well, now the marriage is if you listen to his early rap stuff, I think he blasted monogamy all the time. He's very critical of it. He had needs, Mary, just like Tom Cruise.
And I read further into this blog, The Underground Bunker, which is written by a former Scientologist, that claimed much of the subsequent news coverage focused on revelations by Mark Rathbun. He was a former Scientology executive. And he claimed that the Church of Scientology actively drove a wedge between Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman once he was married to Kidman, helping end their relationship, primarily because Nicole Kidman was not a Scientologist, and she actually tried to get him to leave and succeeded for a short period of time in the early 2000s before he went back. This says the Church of Scientology was so active helping to break up Tom Cruise's second marriage. How involved were they in ending his first to Mimi Rogers? This says Mark Rathbun told Vanity Fair in 2012 that Scientology had a hand in ending both relationships. I participated in the Mimi divorce and the Nick divorce. Both women got cold on David Miscavige. He was integral to the breakup of their marriages. He tells us there's a much more involved story that has never been published about how Scientology was involved in the breakup of Cruise and Mimi Rogers. With the help of Mark Rathbun and several other sources, some of whom have never spoken before, we've put together a story that should fill in important gaps. So basically they said that Mimi Rogers was coming between Tom Cruise and David Miscavige's friendship or mentorship or spiritual leadership, whatever you want to call it. So she was persona non grata. And David Miscavige essentially wanted them broken up so that he could have more influence over Tom Cruise, which leads us to current day, where some people claim Tom Cruise is almost regarded as a deity among Scientologists. He is just at least described by Leah Remini, a former Scientologist, as the second to David Miscavige, quote, a savior of the free world who is considered a deity within Scientology. Obviously, Tom Cruise has never spoken publicly to this perception.
Did you
but
guys?
He wouldn't if it were true.
Did you guys know that David Miscavige, however you pronounce that name, you guys see that his wife has been missing since 2007?
Yeah.
The LAPD just won't investigate it, and her lawyers are like, no, she's just chilling.
A lot of people talk about this.
In today's day and age, how the hell do you avoid ever being seen for, what is that, 17 years?
Mm-hmm.
No, they think that she's just like literally is inside one of the a couple of the rooms inside that big blue building.
Probably.
Or one of the other buildings they have. They have like a huge complex in North Hollywood as well. Maybe people around there have seen it as well. I guess it's very clearly labeled like the Church of Scientology.
How come no one's done like
So it could be anywhere.
guerrilla journalism undercover? Like, why isn't
The reason I just said earlier.
Because they'll ruin your life.
They'll destroy you.
Yeah, but people
They might even kill you.
Dude, Alex Jones found his way into Bohemian Grove. There's got to be
I mean,
someone.
I'll do it.
But that's the thing about
If you
Bohemian
foot the bill,
Grove
I'll do
is
it.
it's
I'm there.
Bohemian Grove, yeah, there's all the legends and the lore, but at the end of the day, the people there cannot be caught like disappearing Alex Jones, especially in 2000 when he was not nearly as controversial. Or whenever it was that he made the
Well, that's
video.
what I'm
But like,
He was still relatively a public figure.
he was, but you know, I think there's a difference between pre-Sandy Hook Alex Jones and post-Sandy Hook Alex Jones in terms of
Pre-internet
notoriety.
Alex Jones,
Yeah, in
yeah.
terms of notoriety. Like Austin radio host Alex Jones,
Yeah.
you know, had a following. I don't think the government considered him a danger.
Right.
Now he's obviously persona non grata for a number of reasons, several of which I do think are reasonable.
I'm just saying, listen, men have flaws. Like, man has flaws. And I guarantee a journalist can go undercover. It might be like a 10-year stint, but that would be the scoop of a lifetime.
it would be,
I
but
mean-
does it matter if you're tarnished?
going
It
forever?
to-
matters if they've got people locked up in rooms in there. I mean, I want to learn about that. Like,
Or just, you know, if they're perhaps killing people. We don't know. But I find it very telling that Nicole Kidman was open to Scientology at the beginning of her relationship with Tom Cruise, but then couldn't hang. Because, as she told it herself, her experience of completing an auditing internship at Scientology London, they say auditing is a form of therapy, so-called therapy, where a low-level person called a pre-clear holds onto electrodes that direct electricity through the body, moving a needle on a machine called an e-meter that supposedly registers harmful energy related to painful experiences. The
Engrams.
auditor, a more senior Scientology member, asks the pre-clear questions to help them reach new realizations about existence. And I guess that's what Nicole Kidman took issue with after all.
It sounds like a lie detector test.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.